What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday we did have that Sony State of Play with several announcements, many of them unexpected with one surprising standout. We're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about the Nintendo 64 expansion pack for the Switch Online with a very exciting title heading to the service here pretty soon. And we're also going to be going over the release date for the next big Batman game, that being Gotham Knights. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Advanced Wars 1+2, as it has now been officially delayed. We can see this over on Twitter from Nintendo of America saying, in light of recent world events, we have made the decision to delay Advanced Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp, which was originally scheduled to release on Nintendo Switch on April 8th. Please stay tuned for updates on a new release date. Now, I think most people look at this and go, well, that kind of makes sense. You really have to look at this from Nintendo's perspective because, remember, these businesses, they're all oriented around PR on social media platforms and everything. They were going to probably spend about a month marketing Advanced Wars 1+2, and with what's going on currently in the world, Ukraine and Russia, that entire situation, really showing off a game like this that's about military conflict and the plot line actually kind of reflecting what's going on currently in Eastern Europe. Nintendo probably didn't want any part of that with how publicized everything is now currently online. I mean, it's like 24/7 coverage. So in their mind, it's like Advanced Wars isn't going to sell a crazy amount of numbers anyway. We'll delay it out until, I guess, a better time to release it. That's the thing now is, when do they release it? Is it like a month later? Is it later in the year? Is it next year? So, I don't know. I guess we'll find out. They just said for now, Advanced Wars 1+2 is delayed indefinitely. I looked around and it seemed like, while people are disappointed, obviously, because the game was looking pretty good, they at least understand why it's happening. Also, occasionally, we'll get a look at what retro hardware can do beyond what it was originally developed in mind, because sometimes we'll get an add-on that has a short shelf life, so developers don't have a chance to take like full advantage of the hardware. Well, take a look at this. This is over on Twitter from Xproger. It says, I'm working on SEGA 32X port. A lot of work needs to be done to optimize the code and achieve the second SH2 CPU benefits. Yeah, that's Tomb Raider running on the 32X. Now, this is OpenLARA, which we talked about previously on the Game Boy Advance, and it didn't exactly run the best, right? It was like the frame rate was in the teens and all this, and based on what we're seeing with the 32X, kind of a slideshow, but it's the idea of just being able to do it in the first place. And I mean, the 32X had a short shelf life. There are like some impressive looking games for it, but clearly it didn't have a massive cycle like the Sega Genesis did, or the Super Nintendo, which ended up having some really impressive games done for it in terms of visuals and sound design and all of that. So who knows, maybe the 32X has actually more left in it than we originally thought. And some people were wondering about other ports. Who knows? I mean, at this time, at least people are looking back on like some of these older pieces of hardware like the 32X and trying to do things like put Tomb Raider on there. So who knows what's next? Maybe, hey, maybe one of those PS1 Resident Evil games could get dropped on there or something. Oh, and a little while ago, we had that entire story of Nintendo just copyright striking and blocking different musical tracks from their games on YouTube. And people are like, hey, can you at least just post them up so we have them, we can listen to them, and you have them preserved? Well, it looks like Square did exactly what people are asking Nintendo to do. And I think this is a good template for Nintendo if they decide to pursue this. But take a look at this. This is over on YouTube Music. It's just Square Enix Music. It's apparently 5,500 tracks just spanning all their different titles and soundtracks that they've previously released. And I mean, they have some good titles on. I mean, Nier's on here, all like a bunch of different Final Fantasies, including Final Fantasy VII Remake, 14. And yes, I did check. The Airbuster theme from Final Fantasy VII Remake is here. You're welcome. Go check it out. It's a very good track from that game, but it's kind of cool. You can just go here to this page, hit shuffle, and you'll just have all kinds of different tracks thrown at you consistently, and just kind of leave that going. And it's, again, a really fun idea, and I'd like to see Nintendo do this, but I'm not exactly holding my breath right now. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with that Sony State of Play. Now, they had told us that they were going to be focusing on Japanese developers and publishers with some of the partnerships they had formed for different third-party games, and for the most part, that's what we saw. It's a little over 20 minutes or so, and there were a bunch of unexpected reveals, and like I said, one surprising standout. But let's start from the top here with Capcom kicking things off with Exoprimal. When they first showed this, they basically showed a bunch of dinosaurs falling out of the sky from like this big portal, and immediately, you see Capcom dinosaurs. I'm like, wait a minute, is this Dino Crisis like the next generation of the... Not quite. It's a new IP, and it's always interesting to see what they can come up with when they have free reign away from any previous intellectual property. But still, when they started showing off the gameplay, it kind of made me think of Anthem, which I don't think is what they're going for. So, I mean, they have until 2023 when this is slated for, so I'm sure we'll see more of this as we go along. PS5 and PS4, though, which... You're going to look through the list of games, and there's a lot of PS4 support here into 2023. So, hey, that PlayStation 4, at least for now, appears to be relevant for another year. Ghostwire Tokyo had another showing. Remember, that's out March 25th, so not too long. And we should start to see some previews pop up here in a bit as well. Final Fantasy Origin, a new demo is out now, and that is releasing next week, March 18th. Forspoken had another showing. That got pushed into October, that being the 11th, and they showed off more gameplay, the traversal and all of this, and I guess it's looking a bit better, but clearly it's been delayed out so they can have more time to work on it. They showed Gundam Evolution. It's spring 2022, and when they first were showing it, I was like, oh, okay, it's like another Gundam Versus style game. And then they went into first person. It's like a first person shooter with a bunch of different Gundams, which is an interesting idea that I at least want to see more about. Like, is this just an arena shooter? Is it kind of like a hero shooter like Overwatch or something? So yes, I will be keeping tabs on Gundam Evolution. A lot of possibilities there. Maybe even bring in different Gundams from things like Gundam Wing and stuff. So we'll see. And then we have Giga Bash. That looks almost like a King of Monsters style game, so that's kind of cool. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle. This is early fall 2022. It's a lot of excitement around this fighting game here. Over 50 playable characters. Pretty cool. Trek to Yomi. That's spring 2022. It's like a black and white samurai action style game. I thought it looked very stylish, but I kind of thought it could have looked better if, say, like the blood splatter and stuff was red to kind of contrast the black and white. But either way, that at least is something I'll be checking out when it does eventually release. Returnal Ascension. So this is like a co-op mode with new content, and this is an update 3.0 that's releasing March 22nd, so in like 2 weeks. Pretty cool there, though, for Returnal fans, or at least people who enjoyed it. A great idea, though, to add in multiplayer through co-op, so not bad. We'll check out more of that as we get closer to its eventual release. And then we have the Dio Field Chronicle. It's coming out in 2022, and as they were showing it, I was absolutely convinced that this was a new Final Fantasy Tactics game. I mean, I was sitting there like, well, okay, yeah, that looks like a summon, awesome. Yeah, it's kind of the art style with the different characters and the cutscenes. This has to be a new Final Fantasy Tactics, and it's Dio Field Chronicle. Again, I guess a new IP, so it's kind of cool, and at least it looks like there's some polish and production value behind this tactical strategy RPG. And then they closed out with Valkyrie Elysium. And this is a game, obviously, in the series of Valkyrie Profile, and the gameplay looks way different. This is much more action-oriented, whereas Valkyrie Profile on the PS1, that was like a turn-based RPG. So I know not everyone is as excited with some of these turn-based RPGs from back in the day, going over to more action-oriented, but it's just kind of the way that Square is positioning a lot of their remasters, remakes, and new sequels. But with all of that out of the way, there was one release that did genuinely surprise me, because it was from Konami. Remember, we had that entire poll question, will Konami be at the State of Play? And a vast majority of us were convinced that they would not, but they showed up with a game that you could argue was the best reveal of the show. Take a look at this. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga Collection. Well, according to the description for the video and the trailer, it has 13 titles, and they showed off like Hyperstone Heist, Manhattan Project, Turtles in Time. They had the fighting game there, and they haven't even shown off all the titles, but 13 of them? That's a lot of value. And in fact, some of the games will have online and co-op play. You can save anytime, boss rush, challenge modes, button mapping, HD texture updates, and additional content like artwork. They might even have an entire museum and concept art, all kinds of stuff you can unlock in the game. this is incredible. Like, I saw this and I was like, wow, because originally they showed like 3 or 4 titles. I'm like, that's not bad. 13? Like, Konami? What are you doing, Konami? You're supposed to be disappointing people. Instead, they're showing up with probably, again, the best showing of the entire state of play. But let me know what you guys were excited for here, what you didn't like, how you felt about the show overall, because we'll be checking in on this with our poll question later on where I asked you guys to give it a grade. Next up, let's talk about that N64 expansion pack, because we did get an announcement for it, and it's an interesting announcement since the game is going to be heading to the service very soon. Take a look at this over on Twitter from Nintendo America. Race at speeds of over 1,000 kilometers an hour when F-Zero X comes to Nintendo Switch for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack members on March 11th. Now, this is interesting because we just got Majora's Mask. They announced this on the 8th of March, and it's coming 3 days later to the service. Now, I don't mind that. Like, oh, you announce it and then it's out in a couple of days. Great, because you may already have the service and you're thinking, well, it's just going to be an extra game getting thrown in there sooner rather than later, because they've been doing the thing where they announce it and then it's like weeks later, it comes out, sometimes even a month later. So I like the idea of it just getting dropped in. And F-Zero X, I mean, this is the most Nintendo's really just recognized F-Zero in general for a while now. And F-Zero X is very good. Like, if you played it on the 64, there weren't a lot of 60 frames per second games on the Nintendo 64. This is one of them. And that was a generation where we were plagued with frame rate issues, and now looking back on it, yes, blurry textures and visuals and all of that. But this game feels great to play, and the idea of online multiplayer is awesome. But that does kind of bring up the question of how good will the online be for this title? Because it does seem kind of like a case-by-case basis with these different 64 games. Like, we've had things like Mario Kart not run that well, but then Star Fox feels like it's almost local. So I'm hoping that they recognize this is a game that we want to run really well because it's going to have that competitive racing feel to it. So make sure it's done correctly, but hey, we'll be finding out tomorrow, actually. So I'm excited for that. As for why the game is heading into the service so quickly after announcement, it's anyone's guess. I mean, Nintendo could be clearing out room for GoldenEye, and maybe they want to get that in there in a couple of weeks after Microsoft, of course, announces that it's coming back, later on for April. Okay, yeah, again, speculation running all over the place online. Maybe Nintendo just said, hey, let's just drop it in there, get it done and out there. And here's hoping, like I said, the online is good, at least from the trailer they showed. The game looks pretty solid and it was running well. So hoping for that clean online experience, and we can look forward to, I guess, the next announcement maybe being closer to these releases now going forward. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Gotham Knights. Now, I've really enjoyed these different Batman games as they've released, and I think Rocksteady absolutely crushed it with their trilogy. I have a soft spot for Asylum, but I understand people look at Arkham City as the Batman game. But now we're looking towards Gotham Knights, which is going to be a more multiplayer-focused Batman game, and we finally have the release date. I was hoping it would be sooner rather than later, but it does look like it's going to be fitting into that holiday time period. We can see this post up on Gotham Knights saying Gotham will always need its heroes suit up for an all-new adventure on October 25th, 2022. That places it right between Forspoken and Starfield, and I'm telling you, this holiday time period, probably between September and right at the beginning of December, you're going to see this fill up quick. I think you're going to see a lot of these big titles because a month or two ago, we did a video on the channel where I just looked at all of the games coming up, and it's a lot. And here we are now into March, and there's still a ton of stuff that needs to be dated. So I think specifically September and October are going to be absolutely jam-packed with games, and we're going to see more release dates here coming up pretty quickly. But Gotham Knights was one that I was very interested in when they kind of talked about it being multiplayer centric, and they showed off some gameplay where you would call in a friend and then you guys would tackle a big base with a bunch of enemies in together using all the different gadgets. It's possible that they just needed more time because the idea of really having a bunch of people jump into a game and trying to balance everything maybe presented some issues. But I guess now that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is pushed into 2023, WB was looking around and saying, well, we need a holiday release, and I guess they figured it's going to be Gotham Knights. So looking forward to it releasing and jumping into the next big Batman game that just now being in October. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I said, give the Sony State of Play a grade. It looks like the majority of people said it was a C, 41%. 17% said D, 25% said F, and then 12% B, and 5% said A. I don't really think I'd be able to give it a D or an F, but I can understand somewhere between B and C. I mean, it's obviously dependent on what kind of games you like, and if you're really interested in some of these games out of Capcom, or specifically Square Enix, I would probably give it right at like a B-, C+. I mean, they showed a lot of gameplay and there were some interesting and different titles there. And hey, I mean, we now have a game to look forward to that has 13 different legacy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, which includes Turtles in Time Online. Like, that is incredible. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from What's At Me saying, congratulations, you have been selected among the shortlisted winners for the ongoing PS5 give. Wow, PS5s are actually really hard to get. I just got to contact the number above. Okay, obviously, don't do that. I would just ignore these different spam bots. It's been an ongoing issue, and many of you messaged me about it. I've mentioned it before, so I'm going to mention it again here. Just kind of walk right past them. Don't respond to them. Certainly don't WhatsApp that number, whatever that is. What I'm trying to do now is just let YouTube know. So I've like messaged them. I've gone through and deleted these comments and even hid the user, but then like 4 more of them pop up. So I'm not really sure what to do at this point. Hopefully YouTube figures something out here. Just don't interact and just, for the most part, ignore them. But we'll also take a look at an actual comment of the day. This one from Sean saying, well, we got that Konami reveal and I am super pumped. Who would have thought that out of all the companies, Capcom, Square, right, all these different companies that were showing up, it was Konami who would have arguably the best reveal. I did not see that twist coming. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike, leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was the Sony State of Play. Let me know what you thought about the show overall, or what about F-Zero X? Heading into the Nintendo Switch online service tomorrow, do you think this shortened announcement to release for these games is gonna be something going forward that we can get used to? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.